A conservative talk show host we all know and love observed yesterday. And it wasn't the same exact point, but it was in the same vein that I had made earlier in the morning, and I'll get around to it. Let me tell you what his point was. That perhaps if the Federal Bureau of Investigation wasn't so consumed with inventing charges against Donald Trump, the leadership of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, if they weren't so consumed with protecting Obama, protecting Hillary, and inventing charges against Donald Trump, perhaps they would not have missed the shooter in Florida. Welcome, everybody. It's Chris Salcedo Show, and I'm glad you've tuned in. I did not make that point, but everyone who I have talked to who is apolitical, meaning who doesn't follow politics like you and I do, it's more of a, wow, that's a shame. You have these people in your life that kind of keep up, you know what I mean, but don't know all the nuance. People are coming to the conclusion all on their own. And what Rush was trying to say is, well, you've got a whole bunch of people consumed with the wrong things, playing politics rather than doing the job that they were hired to do. Now, this isn't the rank and file. This is those making this decisions at the Department of Justice and the FBI. Rod Rosenstein, Christopher Wray, and the Obama holdovers inside of the FBI who are still in the upper echelon trying to cover their tracks. It has come out that the shooter, who I'm just going to refer to as the shooter, I'm not going to name him anymore. I got a lot of email from you guys yesterday saying his name. You guys didn't want to hear his name. And I can appreciate and respect that. And so I think I will take your suggestion. Let's not glorify this maniac. I agree. The Parkland, Florida shooter. He was on the radar screen. We played the soundbite from the student yesterday. We'll probably play it again today. In the yearbook, he was voted most likely to shoot up the joint. I'm being a little facetious, but it was a surprise to no one that he was going to go on this rampage, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who had him on their radar screen. So what happened? Here is another mass shooting that is resulting from a failure of what? Say it with me, ladies and gentlemen. Government. A failure of government. If we just pass these laws, the liberals said, if we just pass these gun restrictions, we'll all be safe. No. Now, it doesn't have to be this way. CBS is reporting that a grandmother stopped another school shooting the day before the Florida massacre. One day before 17 people were killed in Florida's school shooting, a grandmother helped to stop another massacre in Washington state. According to police in Everett, Washington, the grandmother of Joshua Alexander O'Connor called 911 after finding disturbing journal entries that described how the 18-year-old was planning to attack his high school. What did she do? She turned his rear end in. Guess what? People are alive. Law enforcement out there on the left coast, they acted. The FBI didn't. In this case in Florida. The Sutherland Springs shooting at the church, where innocent babies were slaughtered by a man who was dishonorably discharged, who should not have had access to weapons, but he did. You know why? Because government failed. The libs said, oh, no, government will keep us safe. If we just put these restrictions, government will keep us safe. Government will keep us safe. It wasn't true. Dylan Roof should never have passed a background check, should never have received his weapons to shoot up that black church. Guess what? Another failure of government. Now, why am I saying this? Because you know what? Here come the libs. I can hear them now. Well, nobody's perfect. You're damned right. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is perfect. So why would I want to surrender my ability to defend myself and place my protection and my family's protection and my community's protection in your hands? Because you know what? Just like me, you are human. Whether you're in the FBI, or a Democrat. You're human. And though you may claim to have the best intentions, you're going to slip through something's going to slip through the cracks. And when it does, the people need to have an ability to defend themselves. Period. End of sentence. Government will fail because government is made up of human beings and human beings are infallible. So you can't allow nutcase liberals to come, oh, you just give up your weapons and everything will be fine. The government will protect you. Really? Really? You mean the same government that can't stop illegal drugs from flowing across our border? The same government that can't stop illegal aliens from flowing across that border? You mean that competent government I'm going to put my trust in? Screw you. Sorry, no. My family is too important to me to entrust you folks in government to pay attention to little things. I'll back my local police force, thank you. I'll back the local militia, thank you. Because as natural disasters have shown, as community tragedies have shown, the only way we get through is together as a community. And we don't look for a badge. We don't look for an FBI identifier or a CIA identifier or any other type of identifier. It's typically Americans helping Americans. Just normal, everyday, average citizens. You know who helped us here in Houston with Harvey? You know who made the difference? Guys with their own boats. The Cajun Navy. Citizens. They made the difference. It was too big a lift for government. They needed us. We need us. And I'm sick and tired of being told, oh, you just have to surrender your rights and everything will be okay. These lib nutcase progressives, they have an agenda behind this. They use these tragedies as an excuse to take away your rights and liberties. In the end, your rights to resist them. Now back to what I said yesterday. Before El Rushbo had said what he had said about the FBI, we have another story that's brewing here in Texas. Now, we have at least confirmed 4 school districts that are taking taxpayer resources from all of you Republicans, from all of you conservatives, from all of you independents, and even some of you Democrats who don't believe that politics belong inside of schools. They're taking those taxpayer dollars and they're putting their thumbs on the scale of an election. That's illegal. We call it electioneering. And it's illegal. It is illegal for anybody in a government position, i.e. government-run schools, to utilize taxpayer money to support any political candidate, whether they be a Republican, whether they be a Democrat. It's illegal. It cannot be done. Against the law, which shows you the caliber of people that we have teaching our children in gov-run schools, doesn't it? That they would be willing to violate the law to get a political outcome using your money, stabbing you as the taxpayer in the back. How disgusting. How reprehensible. Not one, 4 school districts that we know of. One being reported by Empower Texans. The other one including Brazosport. Brazosport, folks. Who actually named a candidate to support. Red dot that candidate. Named him. And I don't care whether he's a Republican, a Democrat, or whatever. Green Party, doesn't matter. It is illegal for you to use taxpayer time, taxpayer resources, taxpayer money to achieve your political goals. If you are how am I going to put this? An administrator of such low character to do this. It's illegal. But it's being done. Later today, the Texas Attorney General will come on to the Chris Salcedo show and articulate the other districts. And I will ask him, because I know for a fact of certain other districts who are doing the same thing because you guys have reached out to me, I've got to ask the Attorney General, are you telling me there's only 4 in the entire state of Texas? I don't believe it, because I know the insidious left. I know progressives, and I know that there are even some who call themselves Republicans who look at education as an adult jobs program, not as education for children. I got into an interesting discussion last night. I will pivot back to what I said that mirrored Rush here in a second. Got into a conversation with a teacher who was a former Marine. And you know I'm a big proponent of vouchers, of school choice. Well, vouchers, he says, is just a mechanism to give rich people more money. They play the class warfare card. I said, well, no, to be quite frank, the voucher program made a world of difference for poor and minority kids in Washington, D.C. who were stuck in failing schools. President Bush gave them the opportunity to escape those failing schools in Washington, D.C., and Barack Obama took it away. And those parents felt betrayed by President Obama because their children were forced to go back into these underperforming schools. But let's take this teacher's argument at face value, that if you allow school choice, it's going to take away money from schools. That's one of their arguments. So wait a minute. You're sitting here telling me, and by the way, this guy told me that our schools are great. They're fantastic. There's nothing wrong with them. They're, of course, and they're the best that can be. He's, of course, wrong, because test scores, academic test scores, show that our children are falling behind, have fallen behind, and continue to fall behind the rest of the industrialized world, even though we are spending more money per capita for each student. Now, why is that? We are getting less bang for our buck in the educational money. But this teacher claims everything's great, everything's fine, no school choice. But then says if you give parents a choice, that will take away money from government-run schools. Well, how can both be true? How can both be true? If it's a perfect utopian system, then what parent in their right mind would take their children out of a perfect system? Why would government-run schools lose money if parents were given the choice, if they're so great? See, the problem is, I think even these teachers know that the system is corrupt, the system that now is into electioneering instead of teaching, the system that betrays the Texas taxpayer, the system that puts their thumb on the scale of an election in violation of the public trust. I think a lot of these teachers know, and a lot of conservative teachers already know this. You can't be a conservative and be highly regarded inside of government-run schools today. You can't have a differing opinion. You're pressured, you're marginalized, you're looked down upon. And that's the culture. But I think that a lot of these teachers realize that there are tons and tons and tons of Texas citizens who are clamoring for a choice, who would leave at the drop of a hat if they could. Because these educational systems, they believe they're accountable to no one. The electioneering stories prove it. So when they sit there and say, oh, our schools are perfect, but if parents are given the choice, we'll lose money, call them out on their contradiction. Because both can't be true. If you're perfect, you won't lose money because parents will keep their students right there in your school. But if you fear that they're going to take their kids out of your school, then you better start looking at your school. Teachers, there are more of you than there are of those left-wing administrators. And you better start saying to them, we are screwing up big time. We have lost the public's confidence. We can't be getting involved in elections. We can't be doing this liberal indoctrination crap. We've just got to teach our kids so they can compete on the world stage. And here's what I said yesterday. If these left-wing, biased, betraying superintendents and school administrators were paying attention to keeping our kids safe rather than putting their thumb on the scales of an election, perhaps our children would be better safe and better off. Just like Rush said, if the FBI had been paying attention perhaps there'd be 17 people alive today in Parkland, Florida. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Big Friday morning on our plate, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, not one progressive liberal called up yesterday offering a solution to our gun problems. Not gun problems, to our mass shooting problems. And how do the guns factor in on this? I'm willing to entertain their suggestions, but oddly enough, it seems they only have one idea. Only one idea, and they don't even want to admit it. That's why they won't call up here and discuss it. They just want to take your guns away. It won't solve the violence. As a matter of fact, it will increase violence, but that's the only idea they have. One might think they don't want to solve this issue. But hope springs eternal. Democrats, liberals call. 281-558-5738. And, of course, everybody else on the Chris Salcedo Show, call as well. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. The Chris Salcedo Show. The feelers are out, folks. Second day in a row. We're hoping that some Democrat, some liberal somewhere, will come to the table and want to discuss real solutions. Here's what we agree on, and we said this yesterday. We agree that we want to stop these mass shootings. How do we go about doing that? And let's discuss it. Let's have an open and honest and frank discussion about that. Not one progressive or liberal called this program yesterday. Because I don't, to be honest with you folks, just like the illegal immigration debate, by the way, that's going down just like I said it was going to go down. It's a dog and pony show. We're being played by both political parties. It's going down just like that. They'd rather have the issue. So in this case, with illegal immigration, yes, people die, but with mass shootings, it's more of a certainty that people die. And that's why I think it's so disingenuous of Democrats not to come to the table and speak honestly about what might work and what might not work. Donald Trump yesterday jumping in front of the cameras and talking to a bereaved nation.
Our entire nation, with one heavy heart, is praying for the victims and their families. To every parent, teacher, and child who is hurting so badly, we are here for you, whatever you need, whatever we can do to ease your pain. And your suffering is our burden also. No child, no teacher should ever be in danger in an American school. No parent should ever have to fear for their sons and daughters when they kiss them goodbye in the morning.
I think we all agree. We all agree that ought not be the case. Now, how do we solve it? 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Louis, good Friday morning. Welcome to the Salcedo Show. How you been, man?
Doing fine. I'm doing fine. Chris, I hate to be negative, but I don't see any solution because, the government is so corrupted right now. And this thing to high heaven, do you notice how these shootouts been happening in sequence? I mean, and it's happening in quiet neighborhood. It's like they're praying, and I hate to sound like this, but it's like they praying on the white children because it's happening in those neighborhoods, and this has been going on. The FBI even had knowledge about this character. That they see this character that he's out of whack. They ought to go and check this guy, like you were saying earlier. And the FBI is not doing their job, man. I hate to say that, or maybe they got the hentais. I don't know who's behind this.
Yeah,
But there's something. This is happening by coincidence. It's been happening, in this neighborhood.
Well, Rush said it yesterday. Said it. If the leadership in the FBI had their priorities straight, then these things wouldn't be falling through the cracks. And I don't know if that was the case. Here's what I do know, Louis, is the FBI knew of this kid, and we had another example where law enforcement knew of another kid, and that kid was stopped, and for some reason this kid out in Florida wasn't. So,
but look at Sutherland Spring. They knew this guy that was arguing with his mother or somebody, and they knew this. This has been going on, Chris. This has been going on sequence. I've been going backward and studying the situation. I look and I read a lot, and I go back into the past and see what is going on. And this is happening because, it starts in like you were talking earlier, which you are very passionate about the education system, and this is what has happened. Our institutional educational system is failing, and the parent also, how they blame the parent for what is going on, but sometimes the parents, they tie their hand because the government, you can't even spank your little child when it gets out of hand because you go to jail.
By the way, did you hear what happened in the wake of the South Texas school shooting or the church shooting? That magically, all of a sudden, 4,000 guys who were dishonorably discharged, who should have been on the list already, magically appeared on that no gun buy list after that tragedy. I mean, see, and this is the problem. And we said this, I think, when the story came out, is that this government is too big to be administered. This government doesn't know what it's doing. And when we rely so heavily on this government, which we've been conditioned to do, which I don't think we ought to, then all of a sudden we were, there's no way that a guy who's dishonorably discharged is going to get his hands on a weapon because the Democrats said we have a system. Well, fantastic. The system failed, and now all those people in Springtown are dead.
And they scare me. These people who are especially in the Democrats, they scare the hell out of me because those people are incompetent and they have to. These people are for, I don't trust them. They're very dangerous people who are running. The government is overgrown. It's overgrowing. We got people there that we don't need it.
But by the way, I said Springtown.
That's why they were scared. That's why they would.
I said Springtown, Louis.
Happen.
I said Springtown. I'm Sutherland Springs. I keep on.
Sutherland Springs.
Yeah, I keep on mixing it up.
I went over there.
Yeah,
myself.
I know you did. You told me. Hey, man. Hey, have a happy Friday. I know it's not. I know it's a lot of heady stuff we're talking about today, but thanks very much for the call. 281-558-5738. 281-558-KSEV. This is day 2 of this, folks, and we're hoping to maybe get some buy-in from the progressives and the liberals who come to the table and say, this is my idea. This is what I think we ought to do to stop these school shootings. Judge Andrew Napolitano hit Fox News and said this yesterday.
And I like the Israeli model. The school doors are locked, and 2 or 3 of the teachers are trained to carry. You don't know which teachers they are. They do not carry openly. They carry silently and in a hidden way. And how many school killings are there in Israel? None.
None. I mean, why do we have to ignore things that are working? What, out of political correctness? Oh, we don't want to see guns in our schools. Well, you know what? I'd love to. I would love to have somebody protecting my child, a good guy with a gun, rather than having some crazy person come in and hurt them unopposed, and for teachers only to have their bodies to put between themselves and between their kids and a would-be assassin. Back in a minute, folks. Chris Salcedo's show on a Friday. Coming up on the show, the Attorney General of the great state of Texas, Ken Paxton. He'll be here to discuss, some schools getting a little out of line. Oh, actually a lot out of line. Betraying the public's trust, using our taxpayers' money to put their thumbs on the scale of an election. And it doesn't matter to me, folks, whether it's a Republican they're backing, whether it's a Democrat they're backing, it doesn't matter. It's illegal. It's called electioneering, and it's illegal, and we ought not tolerate it. And it shows you the caliber, the integrity of these school administrators who would sign on to this type of activity. That's all coming up. But I want to get to a couple of more answers here on this solution to the gun violence in the United States of America. Ron, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. I'm glad you tuned in.
Good morning, brother. How you doing?
Doing well, sir. Thank you.
Hey, first off, you brought up something that it's been close to my heart for a very long time, and that's Israel. But before I do that, I just wanted to say there's a separation between Democrats in Congress and Democrats that we know out here in the real world.
It's true.
The Democrats that we know out here in the real world, when they don't want guns, they're not doing it because of a political advantage or so they can have control of the populace. They do it because their heart actually is breaking, and they want a solution they just don't understand the right way about going about it.
Right.
It's not. You get what I'm saying?
No, I understand. Yeah, they don't have a wider political agenda. I don't think they have a complete understanding of the situation. Like, for example, I was talking with my mother-in-law, who was a former Democrat, is now a Republican, but she said to me, I don't see why people have to have AR-15s. And I said, you know what? I know a lot of my friends who are like that too. And here's what I always say to them. I say, thank God my rights are not predicated on what you think I need. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who don't think I need to have the First Amendment right to speak on the radio. But thank goodness they can't say, I don't think you need to be on the radio. Thank goodness they can't just suspend my rights because of their feelings. And the same goes with the AR-15. If somebody's breaking into your home with an AR-15, you want to be able to meet force with force, and the American people ought to be able to do that in the realm of self-defense. Ron, I tell my liberal friends this all the time. I will sign on to your gun ban if you can guarantee that there will be no illegal guns in America. But I also remind them that you stupid people can't stop illegal aliens from coming across that border. You can't stop illegal drugs from coming across that border. So what makes me think I'm going to bet my life on your ability to stop illegal guns? You can't do it. Hell, the FBI can't even stop this shooting with this kid out in Florida when they had the heads up on him. Why am I going to put my family's safety and my life in the hands of these people who are just as infallible?
Well, see, I actually have an idea for a solution.
All right, let's go for it.
Okay, so Israelis, and I'm glad you brought them up because I don't understand why the United States does not follow more of their examples. Israelis, when you turn of age, you go serve 2 years in the military, and I'm not trying to get people to go to war. That's not what I'm getting at. What they do is the people go, Israeli students eventually go into the military, and what happens is they demystify war, they demystify standing up for your country, demystify believing in your country, and they demystify holding a gun and firing a gun. They take the boogeyman out of the gun. Yeah. And I think a lot of times that's what's going on with guns, with people who don't want guns. Is they've never held one, they've never fired one. All they ever hear about guns is killing some student or something to that effect. They don't realize that guns are not dangerous. It's the crazies that have guns that should not. And I think that if we were to follow a lot more of the Israeli examples, I think we could take away a lot of these issues because we could take the boogeyman out of so many subjects, like border crossing, like illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
I understand they want to protect dreamers, but there's also a limit to what your country can withstand.
I agree, and guns are tools. And what Judge Andrew Napolitano was talking about is an Israeli model to harden these soft targets, which are our government-run schools. They're soft targets. The reason why crazy people show up to shoot them up is because they're gun-free zones, guns aren't allowed, and they know that they're going to be able to ply their despicable trade unopposed. So what Judge Napolitano, and folks, for those of you just tuning in, here's what the judge said on Fox News.
And I like the Israeli model. The school doors are locked, and 2 or 3 of the teachers are trained to carry. You don't know which teachers they are. They do not carry openly. They carry silently and in a hidden way. And how many school killings are there in Israel? None.
So that is something we can look at and say, that works. That stops the killing, which is what conservatives want, what independents want, and what liberal Democrats claim they want. But if you bring this up to a liberal progressive, I would imagine, guns. Ron, before I let you go, I got it because I got Senator Betancourt calling in. I got a story about a school up in North Texas that had a police officer sitting inside of Ash Wednesday services, and he was asked to leave because some of the kids saw his gun, his sidearm. Now, he was plain clothes, but he had his badge visible, but they didn't see it. But he was asked to leave by the principal who didn't know that he was a parent and didn't know he was supposed to be there. Like you said, demystifying guns and not being afraid of guns, I think is a crucial first step. But I think our political adversaries, as you said, want to make them boogeymen instead of tools, and want to blame the inanimate objects rather than those who are behind those inanimate objects pulling the trigger.
Bless you, Chris.
Thank you, sir, Ron. I appreciate it. As mentioned, El Senador Paul Betancourt, who will be on the Amigos later today, 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 6, is joining us right now. Hey, Paul. Paul?
Israeli model.
Hello there. Yes.
I would add the Egyptian model,
Yeah, well.
which is it's the pharaohs of old. If you did something that they didn't like back in the thousands of years ago, you would be erased from history. Your name would be chiseled off of monuments. And so in a modern day world, if the Israeli model didn't work and somebody tried this, we should chisel their tombstone, turn loose some internet tapeworms, and they are gone.
Well, you know what? I'm not even identifying the shooter anymore. I'm just calling him the shooter. I don't think he deserves his name. I honestly don't.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay, because it must be that part of this psychotic driven is some type of name recognition. So I think we should just, like I said, follow the Israeli model, and then when they pass on, which will be hopefully quickly, then they get erased from history.
Yeah. Hey,
all right.
So what's your take on the Attorney General? Was it yesterday or the day before last? I think it was the day before last. Dropped 3 letters on 3 school districts. One of them, we've played the sound bites here from Louisville ISD, one of their, well, actually, Paul, I think I played this for you the other day when you called. It just so happens that this Louisville was on our radar screen. It turns out it was on the radar screen of the Attorney General, because these school districts, and Empower Texans has found another one, and I got to pull up the story. But long story short, that they've been caught electioneering, which is illegal in the state of Texas.
Right. Pull those up, Chris, and also too. Let's get the disclaimer, because I want to know who's paying for this stuff. Okay?
Yeah. Well,
we
the taxpayers are.
Yeah, well, right. I just want to know what front group's in. Look, okay, what we're talking about is this. I sent out an opinion request for Attorney General Paxton because I was getting lots of information that there were political activities being cranked up in schools by an outfit called Texas Educators Vote. Now, you can go to my website and see some of this at paulbetancourt.com. And I think you've got Attorney General Paxton coming on. When's he coming on?
Bottom of the hour.
All right, great. Perfect timing. Now, all right, so I sent this in to Attorney General, and I've seen things like all of a sudden, 100 school districts in the state take an oath where the trustees pass a resolution, and they're going to basically force their educators to take an oath to support the public school system. And there's also discussion about getting rewards for voting and other things. Well,
we have 2 illegal activities by at least 2 school districts here in the Houston area. Brazosport is one, and this was so egregious they actually named names. And then Empower Texans found another one, Galena Park. The ISD principal there, Joe A. Coleman, used his district email, which of course is public property, which is paid for by taxpayers, to forward to his staff a campaign email for a guy named Scott Milder. I don't even know who Scott Milder is.
Okay, well, he is the guy running as Lieutenant Governor Patrick. But
let's just show you. Well, okay.
So anyway, so it doesn't matter who it is.
It doesn't matter.
Right. Galena Park News. Now let's talk about David Massey. Okay. Danny Massey down at Brazosport ISD. I hope he's listening on the way into work right now.
Mm-hmm.
He had his own Twitter account that was not his. It was Brazosport ISD. And the stuff that's in the letter from the Attorney General is astonishing. Okay. He is out supporting Kristen Tassin, retweeting her, why she needs to be. Here we go. Danny Massey retweeted, thank you, Kristen Tassin, for believing in public education. Okay.
Well, he also wrote, thank you, I guess, Milder, for standing up for public ed. Red dot for Scott, which basically means vote for Scott. He's using his official capacity as his official position to push a political candidate, and that is against the law. You can't do that.
Well, and that's why I asked for the Attorney General's opinion, because all of a sudden, all this was cranking up all over the state, and I'm going, look, I used to be an election official. You can't do this. I mean, nobody would use their account at the county. Can you see County Clerk Stan Stannard, tweeting, saying, vote this or that? I mean, the liberal media would have roasted him alive.
Paul, I got to go to a break because I'm a little long here. Let's stick with me because we'll take up the next segment and get down to the Attorney General. But look, there's a clear agenda. These people are anti-school choice. These people don't want me to have a voice, and they're going to utilize my taxpayer money to basically push for candidates that are going against my agenda. Now, look, if they want to go out and go to a Democrat rally and do this on their own time, that's perfectly okay, folks. But you damn well better not use my taxpayer money to fund your political agenda. And that's the big issue I have here. And the big question we're going to have for the Attorney General is, are these 4 districts the only ones in Texas undertaking this illegal and underhanded activity? Back in a minute, the Chris Salcedo Show on the Voice of Texas. Welcome back, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show. Our mind's very much on schools, not only on school safety and school shootings, but also how, well, back here at home, government-run schools are utilizing taxpayer resources, betraying the taxpayers, in particular you conservative and you Republican taxpayers, to push their administrators' political agenda, and dare I say, some of the teachers. Now, I know I've heard from a lot of teachers, and Senator Paul Betancourt is joining me. I've heard from a lot of teachers who are conservative, who are saying, this is our world. This is the world we live in. We are shunned. We are ostracized. We are demeaned. We are denigrated inside of the government-run schools for our political beliefs. So we're forced underground. And this is the environment in our government-run schools. If you're not some liberal progressive nut, you are marginalized. And now to add insult to injury, Paul, they're utilizing government resources, taxpayer-funded resources, to push their own political agenda.
No question about it, Chris. Look, if you're in Brazosport ISD, I just want to read you what your superintendent was tweeting out on his tweet, which also which also had, sign up for Brazosport ISD stuff on it. Danny Massey at, D Massey _ BISD. There are 700,000 public ed employees. We must come together and vote. # block vote TASA 18. Okay.
Wow. Hold on a minute. Before you, I just want you guys to see where his priority was. Was his tweet about the kids? Was his tweet about education? Was his tweet about getting better pay for teachers? No. His tweet was about the government-run institution. His priority is the institution, not the kids.
No, and look, when you look at the common theme between all these 3 ISDs, that, they're all, basically, retweeting this block vote concept, which is everybody should block vote for whatever the liberal, educrat view of the world is. That's what they're trying to drive.
Exactly. And they want to basically marginalize people like me who believe that parents deserve a choice in how to best educate their children. And here's what we believe as conservatives, that the money follows the child. It doesn't follow the institution. The institution isn't sacrosanct. It is the child who is sacrosanct. And that's where Mr. Massey and I will disagree. And what we say is the money follows the child, federal and state, and the best determining factor of where that child is educated is the parent, not the state. Listen to Louisville ISD superintendent.
Involved and use your teacher voice to create change in Texas. Our kids need you to use your teacher voice at the polls in March to send a strong message to Austin. We are mad as heck and we aren't going to take it anymore. Are you with me? I am Kevin Rogers and I am public education.
And because people like him are public education, I believe is why government-run education is failing.
Okay, let me tell you about Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is going around his neighborhood in his school district, meeting with his employees one-on-one to tell them how he is voting personally on company time. That's what he's doing. And he freely admitted to this in a news article.
Yeah.
So
let me
what
get this
we've
straight.
got-
If you're a teacher and your boss comes up to you and says, here's how I'm voting. And by the way, primary votes are open records, they're public records. So it can be determined how you voted.
Sure.
There's
It can certainly be determined how which primary you voted.
yeah,
in,
which
but
primary you vote. Yeah, exactly. And so long story short, this intimidation factor from somebody who has been given the public trust and somebody who's in charge, wandering around to his employees saying, "Here's how I'm voting. Here's how I'm voting." That's improper.
Okay, can you imagine, Chris? We go back 10 years. I'm the tax assessor.
Yeah.
I wander around the halls of the administration building, telling everybody I'm voting for, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Okay. It would have been political death by hanging, political death by firing squad, political death by phaser.
It's illegal.
It's illegal. I would have been disintegrated, but it's somehow okay because now look, when I sent these opinion requests into the Attorney General, there were liberal columnists all over the state popping up saying, "Oh, there's no political activity in schools. Oh, this is just suppression. This is horrible.
Suppression." Paul, yeah. I don't think I even told you about this. I don't think I even told you. Fort Worth ISD, and I've told the audience about this. There was a preview of a documentary called Ascension. Basically, long story short, illegal alien makes good. Becomes a citizen in 2000. First alien to become part of the Cutting Horse Hall of Fame. Made millions. Great. A good story. Feel good story, right? Well,
Sure.
The school district in Fort Worth ISD makes this gathering mandatory, even though they tell me it wasn't mandatory for the students. It was mandatory for the teachers. And then one wonders, wait a minute, the teachers are there, mandatory. Who's watching the kids? Number one. But anyway, I don't believe them, but I'll leave it up to the folks whether or not they want to believe Fort Worth ISD or not. So it's a captive audience. They bring in, after the documentary, they bring in a Democrat legislator to speak to the kids, and then a left-wing school board member by the name of Jacinto Ramos, who says, I want to teach you all now about critical race theory, which states that American law is white. And that the reason why American law exists is to keep the black people and to keep the brown people down. This is happening at a government-run school on taxpayers' money. And only one side of the equation was represented. So this is, there's no politics on high school campuses. Give me a break.
This is appalling, and that's why I wrote the letter. And I'll stand on this. And in fact, I'll have a press release out that will basically say, look, I'll stand on it. That we knew there was political activity.
Yep.
Let me go read another one from Danny Massey at Danny Massey, Brazosport ISD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he has got his arm around a guy named Scott Milder. Apparently, it's from a Brazoswood High School retweeted, and his comment is, January 29th. Thank you at Scott Milder for standing up for public ed. Red dot for Scott. Vote in the March 6th primary, and then hashtag TASA 18.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is the superintendent. Now, here's my question to the people listening at this point down in Brazosport. What are your trustees doing? If you're a trustee, how can you let your independent school district, superintendent do this? Oh, did you vote for the I guess the oath for educators? Well, you know what? Now you've got your superintendent using, school resources for politics.
Yeah, and it is beyond the pale, in my estimation, the utilization of taxpayer resources to put the thumbs on the scale in any election. I don't care whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, and I just want everybody to know in Brazosport, in Louisville ISD, and there was another school.
Galena Park.
Yeah, Galena Park was one, but there's another one that the AG is targeting, and I'll ask him about that one coming up. That if you believe in school choice, your taxpayer dollars are being used by these people with a public trust to undermine what you want. Look, I have no problem Mr. Massey being some left-wing kook. I have no problem with him saying that government-run education is the best thing since sliced bread, and that he doesn't believe that that government-run education needs to be challenged. That's fine. That's his opinion. He can have it. But when he starts using my resources, my taxpayer money, and the taxpayer money of conservatives to advance this, that's when it steps over the line. He can go attend any left-wing crazy rally he wants. As far as I'm concerned, he's an American citizen. He has the right to free speech. But he doesn't have the right to utilize government resources to shove his own agenda down our throats.
Chris, we can make a difference. I want to thank everybody for going to paulbetancourt.com. There's 43,000 views of what Judge Emmett did with the Astrodome, which is spend your money, property tax money, on the dome. Dump it on the dome.
That's a
we
different topic.
Difference on this morning show. We already have this week.
Yeah.
God bless you and the listeners.
Thank you, Paul. Later this afternoon, folks, the Amigos will take over the mic 4 to 6. Make sure I'm sure this is going to be a topic of conversation. We'll be right back with the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton on The Voice.
Shower throughout the day, certainly looking warmer as well. With the KSEV Weather Center forecast, I'm meteorologist Courtney Spamer.
Each person who was stolen from us yesterday had a full life ahead of them, a life filled with wondrous beauty and unlimited potential and promise. Each one had dreams to pursue, love to give, and talents to share with the world. And each one had a family to whom they meant everything in the world. Today we mourn for all of those who lost their lives. We comfort the grieving and the wounded. And we hurt for the entire community of Parkland, Florida, that is now in shock and pain and searching for answers.
President of the United States yesterday, in an address to the nation, a bereaved nation, calling for healing and unity and addressing the mental illness problem. Joined now by the Attorney General of the great state of Texas, Ken Paxton. Attorney General, welcome back to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Hey, great to be on. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I wanted you to be able to comment on the shooting and maybe whatever efforts you may know here in Texas to make sure that there's no kind of repeat incident here, and how committed our local government is to making sure there is nothing like that here.
You know, I hope that we'll become more and more committed. Obviously, we had that shooting in the church, not long ago in Texas, so we've experienced something very similar. I mean, the solution, obviously there's no perfect solution, but the solution is for people on campus to have some type of weapon, whether you train teachers or law enforcement or something. There's not enough time for first responders to get to a school or get to a church unless, somebody's on location to prevent it.
Yeah, security experts that we had heard talking about this saying the killing is done within the first 5 minutes, and it really necessitates having somebody on premises to stop that. The Israeli model does this, which has been very successful, and when I say let's leave the political correctness behind and let's start saving our kids' lives, I know that some people in our society are intimidated by guns, but I've always believed good guys with guns protect us against bad guys with guns, and that's just a successful dynamic there, if you will.
No, there's no doubt that, like at Sutherland Springs, that if somebody had been in that church with a weapon that could have fought back, that less people would have lost their lives. And I think the same is true in this school. My wife, Angela, is a CHL holder, and she's a teacher, and she is not allowed to carry while she's on campus. It would sure be nice if she could be prepared for something like that. And they want to do more training, fine, but have people ready for those issues, because we know that they're going to happen again. Yeah,
I had observed, and this is a perfect transition into what what we're going to talk about, is I'd observed that if some of these government-run schools inside of the state of Texas had focused on that kind of important thing, safeguarding our kids, keeping our kids safe, getting rid of this political correctness, rather than what some of these school districts are undertaking, which your office has found, electioneering. Perhaps if they focused on doing the job they're supposed to do rather than getting involved in politics, that would be a superior way of going about business in our government-run schools. Let me ask you, what your office found, you found some improprieties at Brazosport ISD, Holiday ISD, and Louisville ISD.
Yeah, so, Texas law is pretty clear on this. You cannot use taxpayer dollars to electioneer or try to promote a candidate or to, in some cases, promote a candidate where you're not exactly saying the candidate's name, but you're pretty much saying everything else. And so we have examples of both, where we have a candidate specifically being talked about with taxpayer dollars on websites and tweets, and so you just can't do that. It's not the taxpayer dollars are not supposed to be used to help fund candidates' races.
No, and everybody with a conscience understands this, and it doesn't matter which political party is being advocated for. It's just improper to utilize our taxpayer money, which Democrats and Republicans and liberals and progressives all pay in, and it's improper to put their thumb on the scale for any candidate. In addition to your 3 school districts that you outlined, Galena Park ISD was found by Empower Texans to have sent out to colleagues using public resources. Let me read from their piece. Earlier this month, Galena Park ISD principal Joe A. Coleman used his district email account to forward to his staff a campaign email from Scott Milder, who was running and a floundering campaign against Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. So let me ask you, you've outlined 3 school districts. Empower Texans has found another. Am I to understand there are only 4 school districts all over the entire state who are partaking in this underhanded and illegal activity?
No, we've actually just started looking into this, and this is just the beginning. I think there potentially are hundreds of school districts doing this to varying degrees. Some trying to stay further away from the line, but there appears to be a real organized effort by somebody or some group to use school district resources to elect, I guess, candidates that superintendents are pushing around the state.
Wow. The Attorney General of the great state of Texas. Oh, go ahead, sir.
It's a little scary because I don't know that I've seen this done ever in Texas before, and I don't know if it's been done in other states, but it's certainly concerning.
Well, on the national level, some of the national talk show hosts have articulated how in local races there's a lot of George Soros money being funneled right here into Texas. So that might have something to do with this corruption inside of the government-run schools. The Attorney General, Ken Paxton, is our guest right now. And, of course, everybody who understands, and dare I say even Democrats, who understand this is improper, this is potentially illegal, and this ought not be happening, they want to know what's going to be done. If these school districts, and you got to know that some of these people, because I've encountered some of them, Attorney General, they're rather arrogant. They don't believe they answer to the people. They don't believe they answer to parents. They believe that they have the right to take public resources and do whatever the hell they want with it. A lot of people are wanting accountability. What will be done if these school districts do not come into compliance with the law?
Well, we first sent cease and desist letters to try to just stop them from doing it, basically give them a warning shot. If they continue to pursue this, we'll file a lawsuit. It's a potential Class A misdemeanor. And obviously, I think the legislature should come back and revisit this next session and start putting in place some stricter penalties and more guidelines for our schools so that we don't have this issue going forward. Or if we do, we have at least a more effective way of stopping it.
Yeah. And you know what? I just got to put the shoe on the other foot. I got to ask some of you folks out there who I not so lovingly call educrats, how would you guys feel if a conservative was using your taxpayer money to work against your best interests or what you believe needed to happen? I think you'd be just as upset as we are. And Attorney General Paxton, this is what's at bottom. It's a fundamental issue of fairness and what the government is there to do and what it's not there to do.
Look, I know it's easy to think if they're working for your cause or they're working for you as a candidate that it's a good thing and maybe to provide excuses for doing it, but ultimately this will be used against other candidates of both parties. And so it's something that I think we need to stop quickly and make sure that our elections are fair and free and that we don't have taxpayer dollars, deciding elections. Because obviously, the schools are a vast resource of financial resources, and they could impact elections all over the state.
Yeah. The last thing I have to ask you is we have received word from many teachers who are conservatives, who are Republicans or conservatives. And they tell tales of being threatened, intimidated, and shamed into silence for having their political views inside of the workplace. My understanding is you can't discriminate against people because they happen to be a conservative or a Republican in government-run schools. Have you received any complaints like this?
No, we have not so far. But I've just heard anecdotal stories from people like you and others that's going on, and it doesn't surprise me. I've certainly worked in corporations where I felt uncomfortable expressing my political views. It wouldn't surprise me if that's occurring in our school district.
Well, do they have a legal remedy? I guess that's my next question, or my next to last question. I guess if a teacher is getting threatened or intimidated by a zealous school administrator who's either left wing or doesn't like their ideas, or their conservative ideas, do they have a recourse in the state? Do they have a place to go for help, for relief?
It's probably more of an individual remedy as opposed to a state remedy. That's another thing I think that maybe the legislature should address, so that my office, or at least some government office, has the ability to impact helping people like that, because a lot of times they don't have the resources to go fight it.
Right.
So there ought to be a way that teachers, particularly our teachers, have a way of combating discrimination based on their political views.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, sir, always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for
By the way,
acting on
Betancourt called to say he will carry that bill right now.
Awesome.
Russell wanted to make sure that you knew that State Senator Paul Betancourt will carry that bill to actually give some protections for conservatives who are teachers so they're not threatened or intimidated. Ken Paxton, sir, always appreciate you being here. Have a great weekend, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Chris. You have a great weekend, too.
You betcha. All right, 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. It's the voice of Texas. And that's going to do it here for the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide on the Vida television network. I want to remind everyone that I think I'm one of the few individuals on television who actually allows you to directly interact with me, unfiltered, live. All you got to do is call AM 700 KSEV 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV from the hours of 7:30 a.m. Eastern until 10 o'clock Eastern, and let your voice be heard. Maybe you don't think we covered something fairly, or maybe you don't think we've covered something enough. It's your chance to weigh in. You can also do so via social media. Go to chrissalcedo.com. All of our contact information is there, or you can do it live in real time during those same hours at Chris Salcedo TX. Even off hours, we respond to Twitter, and it's a good chance, if you make a compelling argument, it'll be featured on the show, if I'm not on the air at the time, the following day. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the Vida Television Network. We'll see you next time.